Hi, I'm Barbara Joffley, CEO of Joffley Consulting, and today I'm going to talk about a subject that always comes up in most of my transactions, and it is lack of communication. I'm going to share with you the ways that I use to ensure that my communication is effective throughout the transaction. But first, be sure to subscribe and activate notifications so you always receive information whenever I post a new video. Just as everything I do, I like to jump right in and be clear about it, right? So first things first, you have to understand all the transaction documents. You have to, and here I'm talking about Florida transactions. So you have to learn and understand everything there is to know about the as-is contract. That's your basic document. If you don't understand what it says yet, please reach out to your broker, ask for a specific class. There are many videos online that you can find a lot of information. So please be sure to read those documents, read the as-is, all the addendums, everything that's going to be attached at some point to your contract. Make sure you read it and you understand exactly what it's saying. You cannot protect your buyer if you don't know what you're protecting them of, right? You don't know if during the inspection period, what exactly it is that you have to do. What are the steps that you have to take to protect your buyer and protect your client and your seller as well? So first thing, you cannot be an effective communicator in real estate if you don't understand the documents. So go ahead, as soon as you're done with this video, go ahead and start reading the as-is contract. Whatever you don't understand, call your broker, write it down, call your real estate attorney, and ask the questions that you need. You have to understand those documents. The second thing is listen first. So when you're requesting repairs, you have to make sure you ask your client why is that they're requesting such repair. Because some things are minor and you can advise your client to say, hey, this is too minor, let's not request that. That'll depend on the contract, it'll depend on the market. So you have to ask questions and know why your client is asking for specific things so that you can advise your client the best way depending on the market and why they're purchasing the property and all those kinds of things. Number 3 is to be organized. So when your buyer requests amount of things like 5 or 6 things, be sure to write it down. Don't forget things. If you're talking to them for about 20-30 minutes on the phone, you're gonna forget things. So write down whatever your buyer wants and the reasons, of course, so that you can effectively bring that to the attention of the listing agent. On the other side, on the seller side, it is very important to be organized in the sense of having all the required documents available in the MLS. So seller's disclosure, if there is an HOA disclosure, lead-based paint, if you're a family member of the seller, the licensee disclosure, whatever documents are necessary, make sure they're available, because I've seen big issues come up from transactions that don't have all the information uploaded to the MLS. What gives the impression that it gives to the selling agent is that the listing agent is not professional, and that already starts it starts the transaction in a bad tone for some agents. So be sure to add everything you have to add to the MLS and make the selling agents work much easier. So that way, all the transaction and communication will be easier throughout the transaction. Number 4, be clear on your request. If your buyer is willing to accept either repairs or a credit, make sure that you know exactly which one your buyer prefers and request that first. If the seller comes back, let's say your buyer requested repairs, and the seller comes back and say, hey, I would be willing to give a credit, then you can do that. But don't send an addendum or a request with 2 options, because that makes it unclear to the listing agent and to the seller exactly what it is that the buyer wants, what it is that will make the buyer happy. Make sure you're clear with any repairs or any requests. This also applies to anything else in the contract. So let's say the appraisal came in lower. If the buyer wants to request a lower purchase price or a credit, be specific with exactly what it is that the buyer wants and submit the request with the specific information that the buyer requested. Number 5, put it in writing. Whatever it is that you're talking, if it's going to be something that needs to be an addendum, make sure you submit an email with exactly what it is that you agreed on the phone, because sometimes the agents will talk on the phone and discuss any repairs or credit or purchase price change, and you can't do that over the phone. Great, but then make sure you send an email so that the listing agent knows that's what I understood of our conversation, and that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create an addendum changing the purchase price. I'm going to create an addendum with the request repair request or with the credit. So make sure you put it in writing, because if for whatever reason the listing agent said something and you understand something else, once you send that email, the listing agent will see what you said and say, hey, that's not exactly what I said. This is what I said. And then things are clear. Once you have that in writing, of course, make sure if it's a major change to the contract, make sure you have an addendum signed by all parties. Number 5, follow up. Always follow up on everything that you requested, on everything that you've talked to the other agent. Make sure that you have reminders. You're not going to remember, if you're working on 5 transactions, you're not going to remember everything that was discussed. But if you're organized and you keep everything in writing, then you're able to follow up on what you said or what you requested, so that the deadlines don't come by and you're like, hey, I don't have that addendum. Number 6 is to be nice. And that may seem like, oh, of course, I'm a nice person. But not always. If you get mad, if you don't like the way someone else talked to you, then still be nice. Don't put your feelings into the transaction. If someone was rude to you or they said something you didn't like, it is not in the best interest of your client for you to be rude to the other party, because it's not going to get things solved. Focus on the problem and solution. Don't focus on whatever someone said to you that made you feel bad. That is something that you have to resolve with yourself. The transaction has nothing to do with that. So keep in mind that when you're working on a transaction, you're working on the best interest of your buyer. And it's not the best interest of your buyer or your seller for you to discuss with the other agent. So these are some items that I have been working on for many years in my transaction, in my career in general, in real estate, and they have been very effective in keeping everybody calm throughout the transaction and keeping things in line. So I hope you like this video. If you do, leave me a like and follow me on Instagram.